everybody. Bolsonaro. E as mulheres estão nessa linha de frente. E não vamos sair enquanto não derrotar.
The purpose of taking the action today.
Hi, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the online meeting tonight, organised by International Socialist Alternative. My name is Ruth Coppinger. I'm a socialist feminist, an activist of many years. I was a member of Parliament here in Ireland as well. And tonight's discussion is a discussion on COVID-19 and a socialist feminist response. It's clear that we're in the middle of a pandemic, which potentially can affect anybody, but of course, not equally. All of the inequalities and oppressions of this system are actually exacerbated a million times because of the coronavirus. Poor people, working class people, and women in particular are paying a heavy price for COVID-19. The majority of frontline workers being women in health, in retail, cleaning, occupations that are undervalued and underpaid, but who are now literally putting their lives on the line to fight this virus, unlike the rich who are able to take refuge on their yachts. For women in the home, there's a huge increase in the burden of housework, people juggling childcare while trying to maintain their jobs, people's incomes falling, and of course, many women workers facing layoffs. Like, for example, here in Ireland, we have thousands of Debenhams, Warehouse, Oasis, and other retail workers who are being let go effectively by multinational companies. We're seeing the brutal impact of intimate partner and domestic violence, an increase in calls to police because of the pressures of the lockdown situation. And we believe that capitalism as a system based on private profit is proving obviously incapable of dealing with coronavirus quickly because the lack of PPE, of beds, and of testing, and because private profit is the guiding motive of our society. Now, tonight's rally will have speakers from a number of countries around the world. From the US, we'll have Kelly Bellin. From South Africa, we'll have Femilo Motsayokai, Jane Barros from Brazil, Tiffen from Poland, and Anya Dushmacher from Belgium. The discussion will be taking up all of the key issues, particularly facing women and working class people. Now, International Socialist Alternative, if you have just tuned in, is a fighting socialist organization based in 30 plus countries. And our members are playing a key role in trying to initiate socialist feminist movements and struggles, particularly through Rosa, which we initiated in a number of countries, and here in Ireland, which we played a key role in fighting for legal abortion rights and a pro-choice abortion legislation. So globally, what we would like to see is a bringing together of all of the feminist and socialist feminist struggles that have taken place. So I'll just introduce our first speaker. Before I do, I would invite people to please share this link with your friends, and to please invite your friends to tune in so that we can increase the audience for the ideas and to hear these speakers, unique speakers tonight. Our first speaker is Kelly Bellin. Kelly is an activist with Socialist Alternative in the US and is going to talk to us about the situation under Trump there for women and for working class people. So Kelly.
Hey everybody. I'm sure you've seen the really constant stories from American healthcare workers, particularly nurses who are 85% women in the US, pleading for and demanding protective equipment, exposing how incapable the for-profit healthcare system is at handling this crisis. And essential workers broadly face unsafe conditions. We have an ongoing and severe lack of access to healthcare and testing, and record levels of unemployment, Meanwhile, one of the largest corporate bailouts in American history is taking place. And this is a really vivid example of what Ruth was talking about, of how the capitalist system itself is at the heart of this devastation, always putting profits before the lives and needs of working people. Many international news headlines feature the incapacity of Trump and the American ruling class to cope with this crisis. What's important is that this is not just a total failure. Just like the ruling class across the globe, it's also a refusal. 22 million people in the US have filed for unemployment in the last month. That figure is expected to only increase. And there are recent estimates that in the middle of a global pandemic, 35 million Americans will lose their health insurance. And this is, of course, on top of the tens of millions who already didn't have health insurance and many more tens of millions who have completely inadequate insurance. And this is just one aspect of the refusal of the ruling elite who fight tooth and nail against Medicare for all, which has led to experts saying that 90% of COVID-19 deaths in the US are preventable. Another major aspect is the outright negligence of measures taken by the Trump administration. Trump has blundered a few times, first trying to say Americans would be forced back to work by Easter, then May 1st, and this week trying to claim his total authority to do so. And now push back a bit from this total authority. He's on a campaign to quote unquote liberate Americans by forcing us back to work. And so in supporting protests around the country that disgustingly use slogans like "my body, my choice" in reference to going back to work and exposing yourself to the virus. And Trump, of course, is not alone in this. Certain state governments and large sections of big business are desperate and very willing to have many thousands more people die so that their profits can continue. And really, even worse than failure and refusal is we, as well as in the US, a weaponizing of the health crisis. It's no secret that the Republican Party here has a long-standing agenda against abortion rights, and that they're now explicitly exploiting this pandemic to move forward this agenda, depending on the fact that people are currently sheltering in place and therefore theoretically unable to fight back. And so Republicans have used the recent stimulus bill to block funding to abortion providers like Planned Parenthood. Conservative state governments in the US are also using this crisis to attack abortion access. And for example, in a series of states where in this process of suspending non-essential medical procedures during the health crisis, they have specifically included abortion in that provision, banning them for the time being. And this is particularly in states where access to abortion has been under attack for decades. For example, in Arkansas, where there's already only one abortion clinic in the state. Abortion access obviously is essential, and it is certainly time. And this is all on top of the fact that travel bans, sheltering in place, all of this makes access to abortion more difficult in itself. And as other speakers will get into, staying home, while necessary to slow the spread of the virus, has a disproportionate impact on the lives of women, who very often carry the burden of the majority of housework and childcare, caring for others in the family as well, who are much more likely to live with an abuser. The coronavirus has objectively cut across struggles for women's rights, and that's the shield that's being used to scale back reproductive healthcare access in a dramatic way. And meanwhile, many of the same forces that are actually saying abortion procedures are endangering society by way of using medical equipment are also fighting for workers to be forced back on the job under life-threatening conditions. And so the coronavirus, this health crisis, is hitting the entire global working class in a vicious way, and capitalism, the ruling class, is only making this crisis worse, far worse than it needs to be. COVID-19 might not care whether you're a low-wage worker or a CEO, but the fact is that billionaires are not the ones risking their lives every single day.
Hi, yeah, the picture is just frozen for the moment, so hopefully we'll be able to go back to Kelly, but we'll move on. Okay, so our next speaker, Femelo. Hi, Femelo Motseokai from South Africa. Femelo is a member of the Workers' and Socialist Party in South Africa and is going to talk to us about the situation there. Femelo. Hi.
Thank you. Am I audible? Hi everyone. My name is Pamela Mozogai from South Africa. I'm a member of the Workers' and Socialist Party. So, currently, it seems that as this pandemic is growing, everything is just slowly descending into chaos. Oh, excuse me. Everything is just descending into chaos. The media is, simply showing us on TV children who are doing e-learning, whereas in the real experience of the people in the background is that a lot of children do not have access to devices or, any means of data services to access e-learning. So, the lockdown is really affecting the working class in very harmful ways. And it is clear that at this point in society, we are reaching a very historical point, and reaching this situation is happening at a point where our economy has already been volatile. And while the elites are actually worried more about their rights to freedom of movement, for many women are actually facing the threat of their human rights being reversed with this pandemic. And capitalism is really not equipped to give specialized responses that recognize women's rights and their social needs. Just a week into the lockdown in South Africa, the Gender-Based Violence Command Center reported that it was receiving triple the amount of calls from women who are trapped with their abusers. Shelters that had been previously accommodating women and children who were running away from abuse said that they had also recognized a decline in women who are seeking for help, meaning that they may be trapped with their abusers at home. And this situation is even more likely for women who are in relationships where there is a history of abuse. So this lockdown is a potential disaster for women, especially if it becomes extended beyond what it is now. Also, the other issue that's very problematic and chaos at the moment is the overrepresentation of women in very vulnerable industries in the economy, in hospitality, in the health sector, in the social care services, in cleaning services. These are industries that are usually not unionized, and women are therefore unable to organize. Waitresses in restaurants are told that those who earn on commissions, they cannot get salaries, and they're told to seek government fundings. And a lot of these people are women. Already in Ethiopia and Kenya, the floriculture sector that is supplying flowers to European markets is seeing a lot of thousands of women already losing their jobs, and they're already being pushed back into poverty. Young girls in Zimbabwe and Angola, even before the pandemic, with the climate change, they were already experiencing drought. Young girls were selling sex so that they could survive for at least 40 cents, and it is likely that the situation will worsen with time as people are very poor in the townships, and they have no means of survival. And the other issue is that transactional sex, especially in South Africa, is a very high thing. And at the heart of Fees Must Fall, one of the things that was being contested for by young women was that fees should be free because they were selling their bodies to pay their own fees. And while for some, actually, they saw this blesser culture as a cohort of the young, for some, it was just a matter of survival. And it is likely to get worse and worse because we're seeing these women in these industries already losing their jobs, and with women being the primary caregivers of children, it is a poor woman means a poor child in most cases. In South Africa alone, a lot of women are single mothers. So, with the combination of them being concentrated in industries that are very vulnerable, they've already been facing, they're standing at the door of poverty. So the thing about the movements in South Africa at this stage, feminist movements, is that they are quiet and they're usually in the hands of NGOs, and they have limitations towards the extent to which they, are able to assist women in their struggles. And the complete lack of trade union involvement in women's issues is actually a big space in the working class movement as a whole. Women at this stage are not a class, and their precariousness in general, is placing them at very difficult positions. But we need to link the oppressions of all layers of society with those of the working class. And we need to build Rosa in all sections, in all countries across the world, and unite struggles of workers, unite struggles of women and all other oppressed layers. Because our job as Marxists at this point is to help these women who are fighting and being radicalized, by their own conditions, to reach socialist conclusions and see that it is actually capitalism that is recreating their misery, and it is therefore incapable of solving the crisis that is unfolding. So I would like you guys to please check out our Facebook group, Facebook page our page on Facebook is called Workers and Socialist Party, an international socialist alternative, to see the perspective that we give to say what is currently happening when people are feeling very confused, as if there is no way out of this crisis, and the capitalists are just okay.
Okay, hi, thank you. And just to say, in the comment section, you can get more information about International Socialist Alternative, and you can also donate to help us in our work in building a socialist feminist response internationally to COVID-19 and to capitalism itself. We got cut off from Kelly Belline in the US, so we're going to go back to Kelly now, if possible.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think where I was talking about how COVID-19 might not care whether you're a low-wage worker or a CEO, but the fact is that billionaires are not the ones risking their lives every single day to make sure that people have food, supplies, healthcare. Billionaires are not essential workers, and in the U.S., it's disproportionately women, Black Americans, immigrants, and it's certainly working class people. And your survival in this pandemic under capitalism is not class neutral. It's unfortunately not a surprise that the hardest hit areas of the US are those with high levels of asthma, high blood pressure, and diabetes found in low income communities and communities of color in particular that have inadequate food, healthcare, and low air quality. The starkest example of that being circulated is from Chicago, where 68% of people who've died from COVID-19 are Black, despite making up 30% of the population. And connected to this, the inequalities that capitalism depends on, sexism, racism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, are key tools for the systematic undervaluing of workforces that are actually essential in society. And these essential workers in the US right now are severely underpaid, on top of being forced to risk their lives, and many can't afford healthcare if they do contract COVID-19. In fact, most essential workers are now making less than those on unemployment. Yet Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, has made $24 billion in profit off of the pandemic, while firing workers who speak up about the unsafe conditions in Amazon warehouses during the coronavirus. And so the role of socialists and of socialist feminism is more important than ever. This crisis is exposing the rotten nature of the capitalist system, but it doesn't have to be like this. And our demands show what's possible and point to the dire need to organize, and now with more creative approaches. But no doubt the ruling class intends to ensure after working people pay for this crisis with their lives, that we also pay for the coming economic depression. And the only way to stop that is to fight back with bold demands that challenge the system that they're propping up. So thank you for having me. I'm sorry about my internet problems, and I'm excited to continue hearing from the other speakers we have today.
Thanks a million, Kelly. And our next speaker is Jane Barros, who's a socialist feminist activist in Brazil with the LSR. And Jane is going to talk to us about the situation under Bolsonaro in Brazil.
Olá, camaradas, meu nome é Jane, sou militante do LSR, membro da Alternativa Socialista Internacional na seção brasileira. Então, estou aqui para falar um pouco sobre como as mulheres têm enfrentado a questão do Covid-19 e começar a pensar, elaborar elementos de programa para esse período que a gente está vivendo. Primeiro que é tudo muito inicial ainda aqui no Brasil, apesar da grande caos, dos efeitos, das mortes, das subnotificações, ainda vivemos um processo inicial da pandemia. Infelizmente, ao que tudo indica, a situação mais grave ainda está por vir. Então é muito difícil a gente falar de um processo que a gente está vivendo e formular ao mesmo tempo, enquanto mulheres trabalhadoras que estamos sendo afetadas no cotidiano por conta da pandemia. Mas eu queria levantar alguns elementos aqui para o debate, para contribuir e para a gente começar a entender, e talvez a gente entender um pouco, o quanto que nos países periféricos, sobretudo em um país como o Brasil, num governo de extrema direita, o quanto que nós estamos muito menos armadas para enfrentar uma situação como essa. A gente sabe que essa pandemia é uma das faces da crise do capitalismo que se mostra incapaz de salvar vidas porque está baseado no lucro e não, na vida como deveria funcionar uma sociedade. Para nós, mulheres, essa situação é ainda mais grave, até porque a situação das mulheres no Brasil já era uma situação que vem acumulando de anos, de cortes nos equipamentos públicos, de cortes no orçamento para garantir a segurança, o combate à violência e uma série de medidas que fragilizaram e secundarizaram as políticas públicas no que garante melhorias e condições e avanços, ainda que pontuais, na condição de vida das mulheres. Então eu queria trazer 3 elementos aqui para a gente discutir e apontar um pouco o que a gente vem pensando sobre o assunto. Primeiro, que não foi o acaso, que a primeira pessoa que morreu de Covid-19 no Brasil foi uma mulher trabalhadora doméstica, empregada, uma mulher negra de 63 anos, que foi impossibilitada de deixar o trabalho pelos seus patrões, que tinham sido testados positivo no Covid-19, e porque sem o salário não conseguiria levar comida para dentro de casa. Isso não é uma exceção, isso infelizmente é a regra num país que tem uma parte considerável da população no trabalho informal, mais de 43 milhões de pessoas. Isso é muita gente. E essa informalidade, ela se agrava no momento em que as pessoas precisam ficar em casa, em quarentena, quando na verdade é a única medida de segurança e de proteção no caso de pandemia. Não temos testagem massiva, não existe equipamentos de proteção sequer para as pessoas que estão trabalhando na linha de frente da saúde, que boa parte são mulheres. Aqui no Brasil, 85% dos profissionais da enfermagem são mulheres. Então, as mulheres estão sendo atingidas em todas as frentes, seja no enfrentamento à pandemia, ou seja de maneira indireta nas suas casas, com desemprego, com a falta de renda para conseguir se manter. Então tem medidas imediatas aí, que tem a ver com a garantia de uma renda emergencial, que foi aprovado no governo federal. Ela é importante, foi aprovado com muito esforço, inclusive dos movimentos, dos coletivos de esquerda. No entanto, a gente sabe que ainda é muito limitado, que não vai resolver o problema, porque isso tem de se arrastar por meses e a crise vai ser muito pior depois. A gente tem um outro problema muito sério também, que tem a ver com a questão da violência contra a mulher. Aqui no Brasil, a cada 2 horas uma mulher é assassinada. O feminicídio é uma triste realidade. E num cenário como esse, isso tende a se agravar. Só nesse primeiro mês, nessas primeiras semanas de quarentena no Brasil, o plantão do Judiciário do Rio de Janeiro notificou um aumento de 50% dos casos de denúncia de violência contra a mulher. Ou seja, na verdade, isso ainda é o início do processo, essa situação tende a se agravar. É necessário que a gente tenha medidas imediatas, como aconteceu em São Paulo, com a pressão dos movimentos, a pressão nas redes sociais, aos equipamentos públicos, que garantiu que o único hospital por aborto legal, ou um dos poucos hospitais por aborto legal na cidade, se mantivesse aberto como um serviço essencial. A gente precisa garantir que os equipamentos de proteção às mulheres também, as delegacias especiais de mulheres também se mantenham abertos como um desses equipamentos essenciais de funcionamento, mas também que os hotéis que hoje estão vazios na cidade, que possam receber as mulheres com seus filhos no momento de crise, né, nesse momento específico da pandemia. Outras medidas também precisam ser tomadas. A gente, hoje no Brasil, o único setor que defende a abertura das escolas e que as crianças voltem de maneira imediata para as escolas, de maneira contundente, é o governo de extrema-direita e o ministro da Educação, que disse que liberou algumas centenas de reais, milhares de reais, para garantir álcool gel nas escolas, o que não garante de nada a segurança das crianças. Isso fez com que, inclusive pela pressão dos pais, dos profissionais de educação, as escolas não fossem abertas nos estados e municípios, o que é positivo, mas ao mesmo tempo a gente tem um problema para lidar, porque as mulheres que já são sobrecarregadas pelas tarefas dentro e fora de casa, agora precisam também cuidar e se atentar à educação dessas crianças dentro de casa, o que é bastante difícil num país onde mais da metade da população sequer tem acesso à internet em casa, 53% não tem acesso à internet. Então, educação à distância, educação domiciliar não é uma realidade possível. Outro problema se soma também ao fechamento das escolas. É uma realidade muito latente que boa parte das crianças vão para as escolas para comer. Fazer a sua principal refeição nas escolas. Alguns estados, mediante a pressão também dos sindicatos, dos coletivos, dos profissionais da educação, permaneceram com as escolas abertas só para almoço. Outros estados garantiram uma pequena bolsa, uma forma de assistência para garantir alimentação para essas crianças de educação infantil. É necessário se ampliar isso, exigir um valor, uma renda imediata para que essas crianças consigam se alimentar e consigam estar em casa. A situação é muito difícil, certamente isso vai gerar mais pressão, problemas de saúde mental, problemas de saúde física nas mulheres que vão estar mais sobrecarregadas. Então a gente precisa se atentar também a atendimentos que possam se dar nessa ordem, como serviços essenciais. A situação não é fácil, acho que tem muita coisa por vir, mas nós sabemos quais são, que esses 3 eixos têm que ser enfrentados. Só para a gente ter uma ideia, na Argentina, durante 10 dias de quarentena, 12 casos de feminicídio foram denunciados. Morreram mais mulheres de feminicídio no início desse processo do que de Covid-19. No Equador, a situação não é diferente. Não é necessariamente, a gente não tem dados oficiais sobre a violência contra a mulher, mas o que a gente percebe é que boa parte dos corpos das pessoas que estão morrendo de Covid-19 morrem em casa e ficam 1 ou 2 dias até que os profissionais da saúde, os profissionais conseguem retirar aquele corpo de casa enfim, enquanto isso o vírus fica circulando, a dor das pessoas que já perderam um ente querido e geralmente essas pessoas que têm a responsabilidade do cuidado são mulheres. Então, a gente está vivendo uma situação ainda muito inicial. A construção de um programa tem que ser feita de maneira conjunta com os pais, com as mulheres, com os educadores. Precisamos criar formas de fortalecer a nossa pressão desde já, via redes sociais, barulhos, pressões na janela, como as pessoas têm ido nas janelas fazerem panelaços. Então a gente precisa ter medidas nesse sentido, e medidas no Brasil, no conjunto da América Latina. Mas a gente sabe que a forma de garantir a defesa das nossas vidas é para além, vai ter que ser para além da pandemia, porque a pandemia sem dúvida vai deixar muitas marcas, uma marca profunda na nossa consciência e de maneira evidente revelar que o capitalismo não consegue garantir vidas. É necessário construir uma alternativa. Essa alternativa precisa ser socialista. A gente precisa ter uma economia, uma sociedade que seja baseada na vida das pessoas e não no lucro. E por isso que vocês que estão aí me ouvindo, eu queria fazer um convite para se juntar a nós nesse processo de luta. Não tem mais espaço para ficar em cima do muro. A gente percebeu que se a gente não lutar pelas nossas vidas, ninguém vai lutar, né? Sobretudo nós, mulheres, trabalhadoras, negros e negros, e a gente precisa se fortalecer nesse processo. Estamos juntos, mesmo distantes nesse momento, e vamos construir conjuntamente programas, uma campanha que fortaleça, que garanta que as mulheres tenham uma renda imediata, que garanta medidas protetivas de combate à violência contra a mulher e garanta medidas para que, durante essa pandemia, as mulheres tenham condições objetivas de garantir que as crianças fiquem dentro de casa e garantir a segurança da sua família. Acho que é um pouco isso. Esse processo ele está sendo processado ainda por nós, mas a gente sabe que nós lutadores, a gente tem que buscar forças, olhar para frente, construir nosso projeto, porque a nossa vida depende disso. O futuro depende disso, o futuro depende da construção de uma alternativa de um mundo não capitalista. É isso, muito obrigada, camaradas.
Thank you, Jane, and really inspiring. And also, if you would like to leave any comments in the comment section about any of the things that you've heard, please do so. And before I bring in the next speaker, I'd invite you to please share, start a watch party, invite your friends to join this meeting. Our next speaker is Tiffen, who's an activist with Socialist Alternative in Poland, where abortion rights are being disgracefully attacked by the right-wing government there. Tiffen.
Hi, comrades. In Poland, the right to abortion is under attack in the midst of the coronavirus crisis. This is not the first time that the government has tried to further restrict this right, which is already limited in Poland. In 2016, the government had to back down in the face of a massive resistance movement in the streets by Polish women and their allies. This time, the confinement prevents us from going out to demonstrate. But we protested by all means possible, with banners and pro-choice symbols in the windows, for example, on social medias, and in some cities, the queues in front of shops have been used to demonstrate. In some cases, this was met with police repression in the form of unjustified fines. Reproductive rights are very limited in Poland. Abortion is legal only in cases where the pregnancy is the result of a crime, if the health or life of the pregnant person is threatened, or if the fetus is suffering from an incurable disease or malformation. Even when those conditions are met, it's difficult to access abortion because doctors can refuse to perform them. There is a whole region in southern Poland where no hospital at all perform abortions. So many Polish women have to go abroad to have an abortion, which of course is no longer possible now. The project under discussion in Parliament is to ban abortion in case of fetal defect, which accounts for the vast majority of legal abortions. But access to contraception is also very restricted. For example, a prescription is needed to obtain the morning after pill. Gynecologists and pharmacists also have the right to refuse to provide contraception because of their own beliefs. Sexism and the denial that women can decide for their own bodies or even think for themselves is very present in the dominant ideology. For example, during the parliament session this week, a member of parliament said that most women have abortions because of the lack of a man who loves them in their lives. Homophobia is also very present among the political elite. A quarter of Poland's territory has been declared zone-free of LGBT ideology by the local government. The same day the abortion ban was discussed in parliament, they also discussed a bill criminalizing sex education. They claim that sex education is exposing children to depravity and is the result of LGBT lobbying. And conservatives in this debate were equating LGBTQI+ people with child molesters. The government's sexism cannot be considered as a simple reflection of the Polish population in general. A strong majority of Polish people are against the abortion ban, and a short majority is for liberalization of abortion rights. The Conservative Party was elected partly thanks to a reactionary layer, but above all thanks to social and welfare concession, and due to the lack of a left-wing alternative. These electoral promises were, for example, to introduce child benefits for the very first time in Poland. While this has improved the situation of many parents, it is still economically difficult to raise a child. There is not enough public nurseries and kindergartens. There is not enough public housing. Wages are generally low, and unemployment benefits are very limited. So the Polish state does not allow birth control, but if you do want children, they do not even offer you the opportunity to raise them in decent conditions. In the 1990s, with the return of capitalism in Poland, the ruling class used the support of the Catholic Church to push through its anti-worker measures. For working women, that meant both the worsening of their living standards, but also the loss of their fundamental rights. In exchange of the church support, the government has made concessions such as the ban on abortion in 1993. The current abortion ban draft was moved for further proceeding in parliamentary committee. That means the struggle against this barbaric law might come back on the agenda at any moment. The struggle to fight this draft will continue, but even if it is defeated, Poland will remain one of the countries in Europe with the most oppressive abortion laws. We must go further and fight for the right to abortion on demand. The Polish section of International Socialist Alternative has just launched the Rosa campaign in Poland. We are fighting for full reproductive rights, comprehensive sexual education, not only the biological aspect, but that will cover questions such as consent and the difference between sex and gender, and for decent public childcare, healthcare, and education. It will also be our task to fight against the worsening of work conditions, because in response to the upcoming economic crisis triggered by COVID-19, the Polish government introduced a series of attacks against the labour code, allowing longer hours and salary cuts. The economic crisis also means that there will be cuts in the public services. Women will suffer of it not only because their working conditions will be attacked, but in many cases because the burden resulting from the decline of public services will rest on their shoulders. Working class women and men will have to fight for jobs, against cuts, and for their rights. Capitalism is exposed as unable to deliver stable and decent living conditions for the masses, and when it is in crisis, it paves the way for reactionary attacks against women, LGBTQA+ people, and minorities. Socialist feminism is needed to link this conclusion with a massive struggle for a new society free of exploitation and oppression of all sorts. Thank you.
Thank you to Fen for the report from Poland where abortion rights are being severely attacked. And if you want to help us and our comrades in Poland to fight these attacks on the rights of women and pregnant people, please join the International Socialist Alternative and join Rosa. And you can do so by looking in the comments section where there are links to join, and also you can donate to help us in our work, which is critical at this time. I'd ask you also, before I bring in our last speaker, to continue to share, to start a watch party with friends, and to invite your friends to watch for our last speaker of the evening, who's Anja Deutschemacher from Rosa in Belgium, and she's a member of the Left Socialist Party in Belgium as well. Anja is going to sum up what our response is as socialists, as internationalists, as socialist feminists to the current coronavirus crisis. Anja?
The speakers before me have spoken about the peak in domestic violence, which is a worldwide phenomenon. But they also made clear that the pandemic is not the cause of domestic violence. It has aggravated the situation as many services closed, but shelters were full well before the outbreak. It is good that many governments feel under pressure to provide temporary solutions, but after the outbreak of the crisis, the problem will still be there, and we need to fight for permanent solutions as affordable housing, decent wages, quality services, and so much more. Stephen and Kelly spoke about the attack on abortion rights. We need to see now how to organize protests on the lockdown in these spaces and build international solidarity for them and fight for universal access to free abortion. That is also a fight for free and high quality health service. And the pandemic shows very painfully how many holes have been cut in healthcare in the decades of the rush to cut costs, to commercialize and privatize, to reduce hospital staff and beds. In many countries, access to abortion has been limited as the pressure of the pandemic forces hospitals to prioritize. That is also the case for services in maternity wards, pregnancy checkups, and so on. Doctors in many countries expect a new peak in their workload after the COVID-19 outbreak, as now postponed non-acute care will become acute. The outbreak of Ebola a number of years ago showed a massive peak in maternal mortality as these services were shut down to fight Ebola. But the situation in healthcare, a sector in which the majority of workers are women, also shows something else. It shows how these workers are of extreme value and absolutely necessary to keep society running. Not just the nurses, but the whole hospital staff. Also, the lowest paid cleaners are now making a gigantic effort, and that's why they are applauded all over the world as our heroes. But these people did not choose to be heroes, and anger is rising in hospitals as in nursing homes. Healthcare workers all over the world point a finger at the past cuts in their services as the main reason for which they are now in this inhumane situation of today. Many of the other frontline sectors also have a majority of women workers. Distribution, retail, social services. Like the healthcare workers, they are likely to be underpaid and have part-time jobs, and many of them will have to only have temporary contracts. Also, like the healthcare workers, they have often been fighting in the last 5 to 10 years against ongoing attempts to even worsen their working conditions, and have been in several countries in the forefront of the struggle for demands like a general decent minimum wage. As the possibilities for action are limited right now and the focus is on fighting the virus, their anger tends to be overlooked. But future struggles of these workers are inevitable, and socialist feminists should do all in their power to help build them. We need to build movements that make sure these lessons about which jobs are valuable and important in society are not lost afterwards, and that these workers do not have to turn back to normal because normal is being underpaid, undervalued, and overlooked. The lockdown has also shed a light on the other care and services that women provide as unpaid labor in their homes. As schools have closed, raising children has become a full-time job again, while many mothers are still at work as well. In workplaces where that was possible, remote work was introduced, with many workers having to perform their normal workload while having their children at home. We need to fight for workers to have their kids at home, not to have to work and keep their full wages. But we also need to take on the higher consciousness on these issues to raise the struggle for services that enable women workers with children to work and have families, by taking over a big part of what is called domestic chores, which is in fact the unpaid labor of women in the home, by creating services that employ workers with decent wages and conditions. The corona crisis shows how women's second-rate position has nothing to do with them being a weak sex. Women all over the world are now making superhuman efforts. Their second-rate position is due to the profit-driven capitalist society we live in, a society in which the rich becoming richer is the first and main goal. Capitalism shows today in full clarity that their system is just not capable of organizing society to cater for the needs of the many. Production has been organized following the needs of the bosses, looking for cheap labor, which now means that many countries are dependent on just a few companies that produce protective gear. Patents and competition between pharmaceutical companies make that it is impossible for society to fully use the scientific knowledge and capacities that are there to develop medication and vaccines. In general, this system is not capable to produce for needs instead of profit. And in the situation of the corona crisis, that means that they are still counting their money, making new profits on the crisis while we are still counting our deaths. This epidemic and the way it is dealt with is hitting the poorest and most vulnerable layers the hardest. There is a world of difference between being locked down in a massive villa with a garden and a swimming pool and being locked down in a small and overcrowded flat with your kids or living on the streets. While in many countries you can be fined now to go out, in those same countries homeless people are still sleeping out with high risks of getting infected and infecting others in their turn. Undocumented immigrants have in many places lost their unregistered jobs as the informal sector has completely shut down. They risk dying of hunger as well as from the virus. And in the refugee camps that have built up as a result of wars and civil wars, as a result of people trying to escape famine and extreme poverty, people are at a massive risk once this virus starts spreading there. The imperialist powers that have created the situations in which these people had to flee their homes will add the lives lost to COVID-19 in the camps to the blood they have on their hands through the drowned and starved immigrants in the seas and deserts that separate them from the US and from fortress Europe. There was a cartoon going around about the pressure to go back to work when the conditions are not there to do it safely. It asked, why do the bosses want you to go back to work? The answer, because you produce that capital, not them. That is for all workers, but capital doesn't only profit from paid work, but also from the massive amount of unpaid work women do in their homes. When capitalist governments cut on education, on healthcare, on social work, so that capitalist companies can keep on paying no taxes or almost no taxes, they decide as well that families will organize that necessary work themselves. They will never allow for women to be fully emancipated, because this means that the needs of every individual are covered by collective and high quality public services with decent working conditions for their workers. For such a program to be possible, it is necessary for society to use the world's production to invest in the needs for all, instead of having it disappear on the bank accounts of the super rich. That's why we call ourselves international socialist feminists, because the struggle against capitalism and for a democratic socialist society that is built on collective solutions that leave no one behind is exactly what is needed to give women the place in society they deserve. That's why international activists of International Socialist Alternative set up ROSA as an alternative to establishment feminism that doesn't offer anything at all for the masses of women in the world. If this is the first time you meet us and you want to fight sexism and you want to fight capitalism, contact us and we can discuss what we can do together. Join ROSA join international socialist alternative and help us build the fight against capitalism and all the misery and inequality it brings along.
Thank you, Anya, for summing up the meeting tonight. And just before we close, I'd invite people once again to find out more, as Anya said, about Rosa. We have been playing a critical role in trying to put a socialist feminist perspective into the global feminist movement that's taken place, including fighting for abortion rights now in Poland and in Ireland as well, and in the many struggles that have been touched on tonight. As has been said, this is a pandemic. It can have a huge change and a huge impact on consciousness. And there should be no return to normality, because normality was not any solution to having a decent life for the majority on the planet. And I'd invite you to have a look at the internationalsocialist.net website, leave your name, find out more, donate to our work if you can. You can see the links in the comments section, and join our future meetings as well that we will be continuing to hold online to bring a socialist and a socialist feminist perspective to events that are taking place internationally. So many thanks for joining us tonight.